FLAX, the podcast. Twin Peaks special. In these special episodes, Flo and Max dive deep into the mysterious world of Twin Peaks. From the Black Lodge to damn good coffee. From giants and owls to analyses and interpretations. And even conversations with the original actors. This podcast is not what it seems.
Hello! And welcome to a unique podcast. I'm Max, and sitting next to me is what cherry pie is for Agent Cooper, my best friend and fellow podcaster, Flo. We are from Germany and hope our English is well enough to listen to us. If not, we set marks for the interviews with our guests. First, it was planned to record this special podcast in German, but your international folks were too excited about our project that we decided to record it in English. You can call us something like Twin Peaks fanboys, and we've wanted to record this podcast for ages. And now it's time, finally. We want to make it our business to bring a little light into the darkness of the Black Lodge and look behind the curtains. But that is not possible on its own, so we have brought some reinforcement in the form of over 10 original actors and actresses from the David Lynch cult series who answer our questions in our multi-part Twin Peaks special episodes. And now, without further ado, let's start with our first topic.
For all those who have not seen the cult series and still want to watch, here's now a little insight.
High school beauty queen Laura Palmer's body, wrapped in plastic, is found on the banks of the lake near the idyllic town of Twin Peaks. The gruesome murder robs the facade of the respectable middle class, gradually revealing a subliminally woven web of greed, jealousy, intrigue, and forbidden passion in which the bizarre inhabitants of the town are entangled is promoted. But why do we find Twin Peaks so fascinating? Twin Peaks cannot be assigned a clear genre because of the assignment of the genre always signals a certain narrative style. And that is what makes Twin Peaks so fascinating. The certain expectations will rather disappoint or exceed. We've got genre-typical multiple codings like the classic whodunit. We've got drama through person constellations and developments, love affairs, family relationships, and criminal relationships. And of course, comedy elements through dialogues between characters. For example, Lucy or Agent Cooper.
Twin Peaks is a show that poses you many riddles and mysteries and makes you rack your brain. It forces you to pay attention to every detail, but sometimes you won't get rewarded by Lynch because he doesn't give you a proper solution for the whole plot.
Yeah.
And you said it's a classical whodunit. However, it reveals step by step an own complex supernatural mythology. The murder case that initiated the plot is solved early in the second season. And later on, the depths of the otherworldly get explored.
Yeah. And it has his absurd moments and a very bizarre humor and his very own aesthetics, like the deer head on the table, meticulously lined up donuts, or the log lady with the tree stump like a baby in her arms. Mystical elements appear everywhere, symbols and even a dancing dwarf and a mysterious giant. Maybe it is all a dream, or the reality is not conditional. And this great tense cliffhanger at the end of season 1, but more about this later. We can say the stories are never finished, but there's a constant narrative development and serious storylines. Even the end does not mark the end, but about that in the other part of the podcast too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you said it, the humor. It's really quirky and bizarre kind of humor. It always feels like he's on a trip when he writes the funny scenes. I mean, David Lynch. He creates some random scenarios that don't bear meaning, but which puts you a smile on your face. And also some funny scenes happen by coincidence. Then again, there's also slapstick humor, like in the scene in which Andy gets hit by a rock when Cooper conducts a Tibetan method. For example, there are plenty of examples. And what I like about Twin Peaks is that many scenes serve only in order to characterize the characters. They don't drive the plot into a specific direction, but they just show the characters as bizarre people, but still adorable people with ordinary problems. Yep. Relationship problems, obsessions, exactly.
And no main characters.
It's a multi-perspectivity.
Yeah. That's why Lynch said once, the only normal people in this city are those you don't get to know. The more you find out about characters, the more fascinating things get.
What struck me about Twin Peaks is that they are not this kind of there are good characters and bad characters, yes, but there are a lot of shades of gray, such as Josie Packard, Leland Palmer. So characters that are in some sense bad, but also good, considering on how you want to think about it. And also characters that are at least suspected to be bad at some point, but are actually good, like Dr. Jacoby, Audrey Horne, and characters that are actually bad, but not quite bad, and you can't hate them, like, for example, Benjamin Horne. Yeah. And spectators have to decide whether you are sympathizing with them or you don't. Yeah. And I think nowadays you take it for granted that you have characters in a series that you can't categorize as either bad or good. But I think back then, 1990, when Twin Peaks was aired, it wasn't. It was still something new to have complex characters. One last thing about the genre mixture we already talked about. I always enjoyed the comedy and the soap scenes because they give you a break from all those mysteries and riddles you got to handle with the whole season, and it makes it easier for you to sympathize with the characters.
Yeah, like you said, at first glance, there are many stereotypical figures, like the provincial policeman Harry S. Truman, the capitalist hotel manager Benjamin Horne, biker James Hurley, or the rebel Bobby Briggs. In the course of the first season, they all have a clear double life between stereotypical social roles and crime. Like you said, dark secrets in the past. I call that split personalities. Schizophrenia is the essence in Twin Peaks. The inhabitants are a late capitalist society. Under the mask of civilization, they all release dark instincts. Of course, there are social institutions, the doctor, Dr. Jacoby, the sheriff, but they all have lost the battle. The characters live extremely subliminal instinctuality. All of them have secret love affairs, consume drugs, there are brothel visits, and even prostitution. I call that a precise representation of the cultural historical type of the bourgeoisie instinct. And we come now to something that many of you have long been waiting for. She gets what she wants, likes to drill holes in coffee mugs, and may have ended up in an asylum. Miss Audrey Horne herself, Sherilyn Fenn, is our first guest. Hello, Miss Fenn.
Hello.
How did you react when David Lynch asked you to play Audrey Horne again after more than 25 years? Can you tell us a little bit more about the conversation, how it went, and what makes your character so special?
Well, we'd been hearing a lot of rumors about it. I was very happy. I mean, I have nothing but positive, memories, and obviously that the show and the characters stood the test of time. It could only be a positive, fun, exciting thing to revisit it. And trusting David completely as I do, I knew it would be interesting, and it did end up being interesting. Well, there was a bit of an issue because I was being asked to jump on board without ever having read anything. And it's not that I didn't end up wanting to do it, but I really wondered what it was going to be specifically. When I read what was originally written, I was disappointed and didn't really understand how this came to be. So we had a little bit of an issue, and at first David wasn't happy, but he rewrote it completely, and then it became really intense and scary and lovely and wonderful and sad. And so, yeah, we did it, and it was great.
How do you interpret the final appearance of your character, Audrey, in episode 16?
How do I interpret the final appearance of Audrey? I would sum it up by saying that she was a prisoner in her own mind, as most people are.
Yeah, you're right. That's very true. Our next question is, what was your personally most interesting anecdote while filming Twin Peaks season 1, 2, or 3?
To me, it's astonishing that David wrote Audrey Horne for me, and I am amazed that somebody could meet somebody for 15 minutes and see right into their soul and create and write a character that would, again, stand the test of time, that lives on, 30 years later. And that's what happened in this situation. And it's the only time it's ever happened in my career.
You can be found at Cameo, have sold your own Audrey dolls, and have written your own book, No Man's Land. Can you tell us more about the book and what can we expect from you in the future?
Yeah, the children's book I wrote, No Man's Land, is based on my son. I wrote it years ago when he was a lot younger, and he's mildly autistic, and no was his favorite word, and it was a way to kind of illustrate how saying no all the time was shutting him off to beautiful experiences. And it was also something that I noticed all people do, so it was a lovely gift to put it out in the world that way. Yeah, the book might be reissued under a different title and possibly could become an animated series. We'll see. It's in God's hands.
Okay, we keep our fingers crossed if it helps. Our last question. You have starred in Tales from the Crypt, one of our favorite episodes, Ray Donovan, Goliath, and many other films and series. Is there a role in the future you want to play?
No, there's not really a role that I want to play in the future that's connected with other things that I've done in the past. I'm a great believer in the teacher that life is, and I've always been brought roles that are oddly paralleling certain situations in my life and give me the opportunity to explore them and illuminate them and grow from them. And that's just what I'm really always leaning towards doing and looking for. Not something that I've sort of already experienced and now I'm just going to repeat it. I love when I can find the truth of my own sort of human struggle and illuminate it while I'm filming and grow from doing it. I think that that's the way that people's work touches other people, is if one is ready, willing, and able to kind of illuminate and explore a specific human struggle that they're having in their life that is immediate, that is right now, that is on the table. Not the sort of my dog died when I was 5 situation, unless it's happening right now and your new dog is dying and then it's sort of become present again. The things that are in the past should stay dead in the past, and I really try to live in the present.
Thank you so much for being in our podcast. We wish you well and stay healthy. Bye.
Thanks for having me, and God bless.
What the hell? This was a damn fine interview, and I lost my cigarette out of my mouth. And now back to Max and Florian for more of that interesting stuff.
One thing I forgot to say, what is very important about Twin Peaks and David Lynch kind of work, his strategy, how he chooses his characters. I read a lot about this in his biography, and there are lots of choices based on coincidences. For example, Michael Anderson. He got to know in a nightclub, and Harry Goes, the actor of Andy Brennan, was the driver of a car by which Lynch got to a tribute event of Roy Orbison. So it's pretty
One of
funny.
my favorite singers of all the time.
Exactly, I know that. And he also managed to got long forgotten actors back to business, such as Richard Beimer, who became famous for his role in West Side Story, as well as Ross Tamblyn. Yeah, that's fascinating because he seemed to see things in actors they're not even aware of themselves. So he see potentials.
Like for David Patrick Kelly from Warriors, come out to play.
And he convert the potentials for the series.
Yeah.
And there's also a quote of Sheryl Lee. She said, he creates visions and art from simple and basic things or objects he finds in his environment instead of looking for something he cannot get. To be honest, this is not a precise quote. I just put it in my own words, but that's approximately what she said about him, and it sums it up pretty well. I mean, that's how we know Lynch, that's how we love Lynch.
Sheryl Lee was just casted because he needed an actress who had only been scheduled for a short scene and had to be from Seattle. And Lynch liked her so much that he used her as Maddie Ferguson too. And the film professor Anne Jersley wrote in her book Postmodern References to Film History that with the cast of actors from the TV series The Mob Squad and other youth and policy series as well, and classic films as West Side Story, deliberately target the film and television history will be referred to. The choice of actors creates a dazzling, double exposed space that lifts the meaning of the series beyond the small town of Twin Peaks to refer to itself as a product of history. But Jersley's thesis is not perfect because of the use of actors like
Frank Silva, who also got his role by coincidence. If I remember correctly, it was the case that he accidentally appeared on a mirror that was seen in the background of camera record in one scene. But Lynch loved his appearance so much because it conforms to his idea of how Bob should look like. So he just gave him the role. Like spontaneously, at least that's what I know about it.
And he is very creepy, so that's a perfect choice. We've got motives of Twin Peaks. For example, Cooper at the Great Northern Hotel, when he falls asleep, he begins to dream. He's in a room hung full with red curtains, a small person or even a dwarf, and the woman are sitting on the sofa. She looks exactly like Laura Palmer and both talk strange things. When the small person stands up and dances to jazz, the woman who looks like Laura kisses Cooper and whispers something in his ear. Then he wakes up thinking he knows who killed Laura Palmer. This is the first stylistic key moment. Up until then, the series was no more than a mysterious crime thriller, and with this dream, a supernatural level moves in. Talking and acting backwards and in the opposite direction forwards is a unique, eerie touch. And that was the first time that happened in any TV series. The idea for this came Lynch when he was leaning on the hood of a hot car.
And I have a quote of David Lynch that is quite fitting. He once said, "I love daydreaming and dream logic and the way dreams go." You can see it here. Also, we should not forget that David Lynch is a visual artist and a painter originally. So you can see the description of surrealists is that they are making collages and unusual combinations of motives in visual arts, seemingly random sequences of words in literature, and juxtaposing narratively and unrelated movie shots, all in order to construct new representations of language, space, and time in art and cause strong sensual reactions. So that's actually what happens also in Twin Peaks.
Lynch is an art fan too. There are so much pieces of old paintings and art you can find in Twin Peaks. I chose only one for now. There is notably frequent depiction of dead women in all areas of art, and I see something in common. On the one hand, death is glossed over. You can find death always in the figure of beautiful young woman and not in the form of old or sick woman. That's the reason death becomes more bearable. The literary and cultural scientist Elizabeth Broven said once, on the one hand, one must assume that it also has something to do with cultural vengeance. The vengeance on the beautiful young woman is the culturally and historically Eve from Garden Eve. Eve, the biblical primordial mother and the figure who in Christianity is equated with the fall of man. She embodies the sexual seduction to evil, to sin, and according to the Bible, she is also the one who brought mortality to paradise in the first place. And that is Laura, said Elizabeth Bronven. He loves baguettes with brie, likes to smoke a few joints, and hold his binoculars upside down. Our second guest is Audrey Horne himself, aka David Patrick Kelly.
This is David Patrick Kelly, Audrey Horne.
Hello, Mr. Kelly. How did you react when David Lynch asked you to play Jerry Horne again after more than 25 years? Can you tell us a little bit more about how the conversation went? And what did you think makes your character in season 3 so special?
When David Lynch asked me to reprise Jerry Horne after 25 years, I was very happy because I did not think that they were going to have any older people. I thought because it was a Showtime series that they would have younger actors. And indeed, he did have wonderful young actors, but he also has shown that he uses older actors all through his work, all his career. So it was wonderful to receive word that I would be playing Jerry Horne again and being with my brother Ben Horne and pretty much nobody else. Ashley Judd as well, the wonderful Ashley Judd. Those are the only two people because Jerry wandered in the woods most of the time after that. And I thought it was really great to show kind of prescient about social isolation and what the future was going to become.
There's a large Twin Peaks fan base in Germany. What do you think makes the series so fascinating outside of America? And what do you think is typical about Germany?
The fan base in Germany. I'm so grateful for Germany. I've worked only a little bit in Germany. My wife, Juliana Francis Kelly, has worked there much more. And she asked me to remind all the German fans that they have a wonderful way of celebrating Christmas. When she worked there, she really loved the way German people celebrate Christmas. It's really delightful and detailed and so time-honored. I think what's great about Germany is the entire history of German art and the great cinema people of Germany down through history, the great actors. And in fact, after my first film, The Warriors, my second film in my career was for Wim Wenders, the great director, and he became a great friend to me. We did a very under-regarded film called Hammett, which I love, and starred Freddie Forrest. And Wim was very supportive, and we really had a wonderful time on that. And he is such a student and fan of American cinema culture and music culture, as you can see from his work, his great love of American culture and music culture. And Germany itself, one of my favorite cities ever is Köln, fantastic place that I visited, and Frankfurt, I visited there. And I really look forward to seeing Berlin and all the other great places in Germany. So the effect of Twin Peaks for the world is that it has a completely unique American sensibility, a story about America, about the USA, and yet it's all through with European and world cinema culture. You know, I think there's always been a global culture. You know, the political systems of the world try to keep us apart, but the people of the world know that the world is one, and we really appreciate each other's cultures everywhere in the world. And I think the USA being represented by Twin Peaks is great. It's eccentric, it's unique, and has the great visual beauty and all the technique and artistry that is particularly American. So I think that's what appeals about it.
Since the third season ended, many Twin Peaks fans around the world have been wondering about that scene in which you stand in the forest and hear the words, "I'm not your foot," from your own foot. What this scene is about. What do you think about it? Is it caused by the high level of marijuana, or is there another secret behind the scene?
The scene in the woods where my foot talks to me, "I am not your foot." I think it had very little to do with the, shall we say, the chemical contribution, you know, the marijuana. I think it was somebody realizing that the world is animated in ways that we have to tap into and respect. So it had all kinds of symbolism. Of course, that also was predictive about the way the world is going with all the legalization and the CBD gummies and the legalization of marijuana and the business, the huge business of marijuana, because Jerry, above all, is a businessman. And so it had to do with that and some kind of, he comes to his own kind of enlightenment, Jerry Horne. And that's part of it. realizing that it's not just his foot. It's kind of his own Zen, enlightenment, where he says the world is much stranger and more wonderful and dangerous than we can imagine.
Besides Twin Peaks, you have acted in a wide variety of films, including The Warriors by Walter Hill, Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Crow, John Wick, and many other cult films. Which of your work was your personal favorite, and do you have a special anecdote that you would like to share with us?
The personal favorite of mine is Twin Peaks and Last Man Standing, which is a lesser-known work of Walter Hill, stars Bruce Willis. And I like it for a number of reasons. People didn't regard it as highly as his other films, 48 Hours and The Warriors. But I think Last Man Standing, the beautiful cinematography, the fact that he made a Western and a gangster film in one, the great, great score by Ry Cooder, one of my favorites, and the fact that it's about cultures assimilating in the USA. And it's in that form of a rewrite of the great Kurosawa, Yojimbo. I loved playing that Irish gangster who was trying to do away with his accent. You remember Christopher Walken had an Irish accent as my henchman in that. But Walter had assigned me Charles T. Farrell's book, Studs Lonigan, to read. And it reminded me of my own grandfather, who was from Ireland and who had an accent. And people trying to do away with their accents and assimilate themselves into culture. And that also was a touching kind of anti-romance that I had, where I'd won the woman in a poker game, and she was Mexican, and this melting. You really saw what they call in the USA the melting pot of all the cultures of the world in one place. You saw it at its most primal. And I thought my range of character for that character, Doyle, gave me a great challenge to do something different than I'd known before.
What do you think about the ending of Twin Peaks: The Return? Many fans were confused about the final. What is your interpretation or thoughts about the ending?
The ending of Twin Peaks is wonderful and mysterious and open-ended, which is great. It leaves you wanting more and wondering what time planet you're on and what happened. It really is so mysterious and great. So I have to be on the side of those who agree with the ending. And it also leaves you hoping that some more will happen, even if it's just in your own mind.
Banzai! Damn, this podcast drives me nuts. But don't give away too many of my secrets. And now back to Max and Florian for the last part of this damn fine podcast.
Let's just talk a little bit about the references in Twin Peaks first season especially. There are a few. For example, when Audrey Horne works undercover, she adopts names of Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel The Scarlet Letter. I didn't know this before, but it was quite a fun fact to me. Yep. And there are also quite some homages to Hitchcock. The name Madeleine Ferguson, who is a cousin of Laura Palmer and is embodied by the same actress, is a combination of the names of the protagonists of Hitchcock's Vertigo, which thematized the doppelganger motif.
And that's not the only Hitchcock reference. Laura's corpse floating down the river could be a quote from the beginning of Hitchcock's Frenzy. And we've got more motives from old movies, like the motorcyclists wearing leather jackets, like James Dean or Marlon Brando. And Donna Hayward's transforming from the upright small-town girl into a suntanned film noir femme fatale. By the way, this is a strong motive from the 40s. And Lynch is a big fan from old film noir movies. Like there's a scene that's not something about a film noir, but it's quite funny. In the nightclub One Eye Jacks, Cooper and Truman called themselves Barney and Fred, like the Flintstones. Yeah, that shows that Lynch even likes comics and animation series.
One obvious thing you forgot, the name Gordon Cole. Is taken from his favorite film, I think, Sunset Boulevard, because there's a cop who has only a very short appearance in the film. Is named Gordon Cole, and apparently David Lynch liked the name so much, or just wanted to have some reference to one of his favorite films by taking this name.
And it's a key scene in The Return but later
Yeah,
more in the other part of this podcast.
I remember.
And I have to go back to the author Jersley. She said Cooper's mysterious prehistory in Pittsburgh could be a reference to Jack Gitty's obscure past in the novel for Roman Polanski's classic film Chinatown. And this is neo-noir.
Yeah.
You see a lot of noir motives. So
he enjoyed the noir genre in a timeline, not only the old ones, but also the later ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's another motive in Twin Peaks, the concept of border place. This is an important role. The city lies geographically in the border area, and analogs to this it deals with the impossibility of drawing borders. There are many ambiguous people full of secrets. They cannot psychologically distance themselves from the environment. Doubling always plays a role, as the title refers to. Twin Peaks was originally called Northwestern Passage. We've got this passage and double meaning even in the original title. The doublings are reminiscent of the following boundaries between I, you, the in and outside, the good and bad in the series. They are symbols for the repressed. Behind the everyday lies often abysses of normality, darkness, evil. In Twin Peaks, the boundaries between normal and abnormal disappear.
I think we talked enough about references and homages, so we can go on with remarkable scenes and favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I'd like to start with some remarkable scenes or scenes that just stuck in my mind. Mm-hmm. The scenes in which Leland Palmer mourns his daughter's death. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of these scenes in the first season, and it's just the way he acts is kind of funny because it looks like over the top and bizarre. Yeah. But at the same time, I found them very unsettling. And back then, I deeply empathized with Leland, especially during the funeral of Laura, because I can imagine the pain he must have felt inside or the close relationship they had. Of course, all the thoughts and ideas are cancelled by the happenings in Fire Walk with Me, mm-hmm. but that's a different topic we will discuss in a later podcast. But you don't know that yet in the season 1, and what leaves is the feeling of sympathy and compassion to Leland, but at the same time you don't know if you want to laugh about because the bizarreness of the scene. I want to give you an example. There's a scene in which Jerry Horne makes an announcement in front of Icelandic potential investors in the Great Northern Hotel. I think it is the 5th episode, I'm not quite sure. You will know it better. And Leland starts dancing in tears when the music starts, and instead of just being compassionate with him or just expressing sympathy, everybody joins dancing with a lot of joy. So his sorrow is exploited for a fun scene, which I felt conflicted about because I don't know if I should laugh or not. And that's just the scenes. They're not my favorite scenes, of course not, but there are scenes that stuck in my mind because they really touch me in different levels.
Yeah, I've got so many favorite scenes. To pick one is really hard. But the first time Agent Cooper arrives to Twin Peaks, I know that now, gives me goosebumps every time all over my body. And that's one of my favorite scenes. It's a remarkable scene. It's a well-known scene. I laughed out loudly. The llama scene in the doctor's office comes up. And yeah, to pick a favorite scene is quite hard, and even a favorite character. But one of the funniest scenes and one of my favorite characters is Pete Martell, because he has the first line in the series, "Gone fishing," and he had the scene with Harry Truman and Agent Cooper with the coffee, with "There's a fish in the percolator." This scene is fantastic, and I burst out laughing, and that it's simply wonderful. And Jack Nance is a wonderful actor in Eraserhead, the small parts in other Lynch films. He looks so sad, but he is a funny guy. His way to talk, his way to act. He's a wonderful actor, and he's deeply missed. And maybe he's my favorite character in the series because I know how he died. And that's the tragical part. that hits my feelings.
When I think about my favorite funny scenes, there's no way out but to think about the baguette scene. That is a scene when Jerry Horne appeared for the first time, I think, and he was in France, and he brought with him some baguettes. And the whole setting is very funny because at the beginning it's very serious, and Benjamin Horne was introduced as a very serious businessman, and the whole dinner looked very well mannered and orderly, and then suddenly Jerry comes in, who's like the opposite to the whole Horne family in general, and in his presence Benjamin changed and forgets about his good manners, speaking with his mouth full.
He became a child.
Yeah, exactly. And he bites into the baguette very sloppily. And yeah, I love how over-enthusiastic characters in general react on food and drinks in the series. And yeah, another great scene is when Truman punches Albert in his face after he has been reluctant to pass the corpse of Laura Palmer for the funeral. But that's just because Albert was an asshole before. And later he becomes a bit more complex.
Yeah, but thanks for the baguette scene. It's stuck in my mind now. And what would Leland say? I am hungry.
That's a good one. Yeah, and favorite characters. I mean, it's a very mainstream choice, but Agent Cooper. You have to admit that he's just a lovable character. He's also very over-enthusiastic about simple things. For example, he said sentences like, "Look, ducks on a lake, great morning, duckless furs, they're so beautiful," or stuff like that. So he really sees the positive aspects of everything, and he feels no hate. He's basically the contrast to the shady anti-heroes you can find in film noirs or in Western movies. When he was introduced as an FBI agent right at the beginning, I expected him to become a type of person who is cynical and maybe exhausted from life, because that's like a stereotype. But actually, Albert embodies the type of character, but not Cooper. Cooper is at peace of himself. He has a clear plan of everything and always knows what to do next. And I love how he minutes his whole life by his contact to Diane. He just tells her everything, like a diary. And yeah, he's a hero that saves the day. You can sum it up like this.
The last thing on our list is the question, what makes the series so special for me or for you? And I've got many things that are special for me. My first tattoo on my left arm. My arm was not shaking when I've got this tattoo. I was not possessed from Bob, but I was possessed from the series. I've got an owl and a coffee mug and hands holding the log and Douglas pines and the hills and cherry pie. The classical motifs of Twin Peaks. And since I watched Twin Peaks the first time, I love black coffee. I don't know if I love black coffee before. While we're recording this, I've drank a huge mug of black coffee. And I love to bake. 3 times a year, I've make my own cherry pie. After the original recipe or another recipe, I love cherry pie, and Twin Peaks changed my pop cultural world. Everyday view on things has changed. I discover many motives of Twin Peaks in my everyday life, and in films, in series. The X-Files never existed without Twin Peaks, and I've watched the X-Files before, and I don't know that. And yeah, I've got a lot of merchandise in my room. Twin Peaks, Funko Pops, books. I've made my own ring. I've got a key with the keychain from the Great Northern Hotel. I've collected everything from Twin Peaks. My carpet has the pattern from the floor in the Black Lodge. I spent a lot of money in Twin Peaks things. And the music from Angelo Badalamenti is wonderful, and because of the Badalamenti music, I discovered a lot of artists that are similar. I could talk about Twin Peaks and his huge impact in my life for hours, but maybe in another part of our series.
To be honest, Twin Peaks didn't left such a strong footprint on my lifestyle like in your case, because it's not that long ago when I watched it. You taught me about this, and I'm grateful until now. I will ever be grateful for that. But yeah, there are, I think, 3 key themes I like about Twin Peaks: the settings, the score, and the characters. I will start with the settings. I just love the cozy wooden and rustic Great Northern Hotel in the top of a waterfall, just idyllic. And of course the 1950s inspired double R diner with those red leather seats and chessboard floor that seem to have fallen out of time, but it just fits well in the series. About the score, you mentioned it before. I actually knew some pieces from Twin Peaks, funnily, even before I've watched the series, because I've used to be a sucker for good movie scores and constantly seeked for such. And I love Laura Palmer's theme even more than the intro.
Me too.
Oh, great. Because it's terribly sad, filled with emotions, and a bit threatening and obscure at the same time. I associated with the visuals of characters mourning her death when her death was announced in the pilot episode, because actually the first half hour of the pilot episode is full of scenes in which people crying about Laura being dead, and the theme is played constantly during the scenes. And about the intro, but I also have very deep emotional connection to the intro, because every time I heard it, I felt at home. There's a warm feeling around my chest that lures to dive deep into another world in which all characters feel close to me in a positive or negative way. And yeah, that's the characters. Many of them are just connected to each other. There's a big variety of different characters, which creates a lot of different conflicts. Every character has its value in a small community. There's no character like the other, and no one is redundant, maybe apart from Maddie Ferguson. Or, to be honest, in the season 2, there are some redundant characters you don't really need in the series. But we can come to this in the next episode.
Next part,
but in season 1, nearly every character for me is an important piece of a puzzle. And everybody has its struggles and passions, and there's no functional character, so to speak, that only serves to drive the plot. All of them have a value in the community.
Yeah, wonderful. That's the perfect closure for our podcast.
Yeah.
And stay tuned. After our jingle comes a huge annunciation with our next guest in the next part. Thank you, Flo, for being part of that special podcast.
It was a pleasure for me.
Wonderful. And don't forget, every day, once a day, make yourself a present. And now we've take a catnip on our office chair and say goodbye. And until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
And our next guest in the upcoming Twin Peaks special are
the Giant and the Fireman himself, Karres Strucken, Wyndham Earl, Kenneth Welsh, and Harold Smith, Lenny Van Dolen. Coming out on the 1st of November.